when we talk about pivot tables, what does pivot tables mean? I know we have used this. So when you look at your data, it is having more than how many columns are these? Those are 16 columns. So you're having more than 16 columns with data that you'll need to actually there are 18 columns with data you'll need to summarize. And the first thing last time I told you, you always do exploration, you explore your work. Let me expand this to 100. So you always do exploration and understand what do you have. You have languages, country, then you look out some things you'll need to add, you'll need to get average depending on what the question is asking for. So here I'm looking at the gross revenue, looking at the budget, looking at the reviews that have been done, the duration people have taken watching it. These are reviews, the number of movies, likes, the directors, a lot. So looking at this, for now, it may not give you sense, not until someone asks a question from here. Like how much revenue did this company get from adventure movies? That's when you think about, oh, I need to summarize all adventure movies by the revenue that was generated there. Then that's when I can answer the question that this is the much that was garnered from adventure. Then maybe even a question can come, how much money did this company gain from all movies directed by, let's say, William? And maybe you're giving these directors commissions depending on how their movies are being watched. So those are the things. That's why we use data. Now, all that comes, you need to summarize data. So last time we looked at pivot tables and still today. So here, there was a scenario like if someone asks you, which state had the highest population in 2022? 2002. In which year was overall US population the highest? Like, you're looking at this data, but can you tell just with the mere looking at the figures and tell that, oh, this is the answer? No, you'll have to bring this table into a summary, which we call a pivot table. So looking at what pivot means, you have a raw data like this. We have been using the pivot functionality to create pivots which have been showing in this form, which is a summary of this. We know what to put in rows, we know what to put in columns. So like here, there is a quotation that analyzing data without a pivot table is like hammering a nail without a noodle. It is like hammering a nail without a hammer, I can put it right. So if you ever think about analyzing data in Excel, that's pivot. Then when you go to systems like Power BI, systems like Looker Studio, we also have functionalities called pivot tables. So there is no way how you can escape from pivot tables. So what are the benefits? First of all, we have seen that pivot tables are powerful. They uncover insights and answer questions. We have seen that. Immediately you create a pivot table, you start telling answers. Oh, this is the highest marketing revenue. Oh, this salesperson was the highest in bringing in orders. Oh, this is how I cost on this service or product in my company. Then I have to start reducing the cost. It's that powerful. We have seen how beauty it is. You have seen at your dashboards. You have seen on how we did that condition formatting and things were looking slick. How fast it is, creating custom visuals, filters, calculated fields. We haven't gone to calculated fields. I know in our next project, we are going to do more with calculated fields. How accurate it is. You can mess up with summing, averaging, but pivot tables will never mess up if you use them right. Then the flexibility. I know even us who have never used a pivot table or to the maximum of how many times you have always thought using it. This time it is very flexible with the 2-3 sessions we have had. You can always now think about using it with ease. So those are the purposes you can always tell someone, or you can always tell your instance that, you know what, use pivot tables because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you can always go and read about them. Now, before you start thinking about using pivot tables, there is something we call data cleaning. I know I will share with you guys a video of how we do data cleaning. Yes, I know some projects we may do data cleaning, but it may be just for that specific data. Data that is in this format, it's good I put their boys one happy, another one crying, so you know what is right. You can imagine giving you such a data and they tell you create a pivot table from there. It is a mess. You have to do a lot here to clean. Sometimes you may do a lot of manual work. So this data, we have all seen that. In our first session, I told you that before you use pivot tables, make sure you don't have any blank row, you make sure you don't have any blank column between your data. The moment you start creating your dashboards, your pivot tables, it will always be fine. I'll share with you this document you look through. Rectangle variables have to be in columns, observations as rows. Like now you see here you have they are like it is transposed, it is in the opposite way. Like periods at the top, then you have what is supposed to be in columns in rows. Then you have a mix up of percentages, you have a mix up of numbers, there is a lot of mix up. And on top of that, you have one table here, you have a table here for monthly costs. This and this, it has no connection, but they will want you this month speaking to either these parameters or the other ones on top, which is something hard to go with. So make sure that you don't have extra headers, footers, subtitles. As you see here, it is. You have headers here, monthly costs. You have another header, marketing data. Always make sure you remove all those headers for you to start using pivot tables. We are going to look at that. So we are creating a pivot here. It is very simple. Click here. You look out for insert. Then you insert a pivot. Then what we didn't look at last time was recommended pivot tables. So when you click on recommended pivot tables, Excel will give you a recommendation of pivot tables. So you'll see here it is like a part of an AI or an artificial intelligence in Excel. It will look at your data and say, okay, you need gross revenue by rating. It puts, but I may not need this. You skip it. You can even exit here. You need gross revenue by cast FB, likes and totals. If you want that, you just say insert on sheet or insert on a new sheet. Like it gives you all the summaries of pivot tables, and here it still is showing me that there are more 10 results. So when you click on more will come. This one is cast FB by language and genre. This one is gross revenue by genre. Then this is gross revenue by rating. Depending on what you want, you can easily pick it from here. But always, if you know what you want, still you can go ahead and use this directly rather than using what is recommended. So I'll go ahead and click on that, put it on new. You can add it on data models, then you do insert. That's the easiness. We have seen that you can create pivot tables with ease. Here they tell us, okay, these are the two. I've shown you how we use recommended. These are recommended. You choose exactly what you want, but you go through. Then if you want to use the other one, you always create it on a new sheet or an existing sheet. You remember last time when we had created a summary sheet. So you'd create existing sheet and go and look for it. So that's it. Now we after creating that, we have a field list. What you see here is a field list. So this field list can disappear, and you shouldn't worry when it disappears. I can cancel it when I don't need it. And when I click here in pivot table, it doesn't appear. The only thing is one, look out for a pivot table analyze tab in the ribbon. And when you can't see this, it means your cursor is not in the canvas. So if I click outside the canvas of a pivot table, you see it disappears. If I click in the canvas again, it reappears. So when it appears, these are the options of a pivot table, but this time what we need is this. So pivot table list, field list, then the list will appear. Now, let's start going through one by one in the list. In the list, we have one, the layout options that allow you to adjust and look for the best field. So here it is. You see this? When I click on this, at the moment it is by default this. So when I want to put the field sections on sides, this is how it appears. It means you have your field sections here. When I pick, let's say, genre on rows and pick revenue, and I pick revenue and I put it in values, this is the way how it will be. So you see now this time I'm picking and putting just on the right. Then the other time I was picking this, putting on rows, picking this, putting on values, which is always the default. So you can always change the layout here. You feel you can easily use you as you. Then there is this that has no sections. Like you're only looking at the columns. I'm not looking at any fields. Here it is, maybe if you want to see which column do you have the other side, the headers, but you can hardly use this right. So there are even others here, you're only looking at the area sections 2 by 2, but you're not looking at the columns. It is the inverse of the other. So both of those, you can use them just to review, but you can't use them to work. So this, you also look at the sections, but you're not looking at where the data source is. So the two here at the top, they stand out. So this is it. Now there is also an option here of collapsing this table, or you can expand it like this. But you can even do it from here like this. So if I want to expand, that's I've collapsed. We are going to have a project where we are picking data from different sources. So you'll have like more than 5 tables here, like branch A, branch B, branch C, like that. I remember James asked that question once. We shall reach that point, like in project number 5, we shall do that. So here, if you want to collapse and look at the many sources you have, you can use that. We read through. The field list will show all the variables in your data set. These are the columns. They will always be here in the field list. Then we have filters, we have columns, we have rows, and we have values. Now those ones filters. Let's say if I want to put country in filters, I will drag country and put it in filters. It goes here at the top. You see this at the top. It means that when I want to select one country, let's say Afghanistan, and do OK, it will only select Afghanistan. They only watch drama. If I say Aruba, they only watch actions. If I say France, they watch all these genres. So those are filters, and you can add even more than one filters. You can even bring the language under filters like this. They become 2 filters. France, then under France, you can select Aramaic, there is none. So you'll find that in France, none of them are there. So which means I better leave this one as all, like this. Or it means that this filter is not required. Actually, when you want to remove anything from the filter or anything from the filter list, just drag it and drop it outside. You see here it is having an X. Just drag it and throw it out, it will go. Then when you go in the field list under values, how do we change from sum to count to average, name them? There is, you see, when you want any options in any of the field settings here, by the way, these field lists, you can always detach them. If you drag it here, you can detach it and bring it in the middle of your sheet. It is not a must that it has to be at the end. So you can always detach it and bring it near here. For those working with big screens, such that you don't keep moving the cursor left, right, bring it nearer and work on your stuff without sweating. So I was saying, if you want options for anything or under rows or under values, you can always click on that arrow, or you can always right click. Right? Sorry, left. Yeah, it is left click. Left click is the normal click on our cursors. Maybe if you're left-handed. So there is this option of value field settings. That's where you'll always find these options. Now, under these options, let me first put this aside. I can't put it aside. Okay, let's put this now here. You can enlarge it. Now, the value field settings, that's where you can select count. I want average. I want this. You can even change the header from here. Twist it, bring the values this side like that. You can twist it depending on how you want it. It is all about knowing the depth knowledge on how to twist these pivot tables. The moment you know, you can make them whatever you want. We shall be seeing in projects, but even now, you know, a lot can be done with pivot tables. Even only this field list, you can twist it the way you want, depending obviously on what you want to see. Now, let's go to the Analyze and Design option. Now, the moment you have clicked in the pivot tables, you'll always have these two tabs, Pivot Table Analyze and Design. All your work, all your 1,000 tips and pros will always be in these two, in Analyze and Design. So let's start with Analyze. What do we find in Analyze? This is the way how it looks like. You'll always find there the pivot table settings. We saw this, how we rename. We saw how you get the options here. You see this, if you don't get it from here, you can right click in your pivot table and say pivot table options. So that's where we have a lot of stuff to deal with. Here you're dealing with layout. We are going to look at even how you deal with data. Here you may say, refresh my data every time I open it. It means like this data your team is updating, and when you come back, you want, by the time you open it, let it refresh. Some people, you'll want it not to refresh until you open and refresh manually from here. So there are many settings this side. You can even create alt text, means in case this pivot table is null, what should they show here and what should be the description. But these are the things we hardly use, but they are always hidden. And at some point you'll always need them. Then the default settings is show, expand, and collapse button. We saw them in the field list. Show contextual tooltip, that if I'm passing my cursor, it should be showing me this is rows, this is this. Show properties in tooltips, that is showing what every highlight you have put a cursor on. There are a lot. We may not go through everything here, but there are a lot. So some of the things you can always try out. In this stage, I may not want to confuse us to go through some of the things that may not make sense right now. But that's the Analyze. We find there what's the active field. So any field you click in here, it shows you what is active. So when you go to that field settings, it will show you what it is. This is journals, then subtotals, and you can do null, or if you want to it automatic, but it is always by default null. So if there are numbers, let's say if I'm clicking here, field settings, that's where I will always have these options of count and name them. But because I'm here in alphabet, it will not give me those options. They are grayed out. So that's it. Then there is include new items in manual filter. So you can always include new items in manual filter here, but we shall look at that later, where you may want to include something that is not in the previous data. Or you can even rename this, and they are renamed, but we shall look at that later. So maybe a trick I will want to show you. Sometimes, do we have months here? Let me pick a field. Click here again, get our field. You see the pivot table fields disappear the moment you click out. So let me check if we have dates. Yeah, we have a release date. So if I bring a release date here instead of the journals, so that release date is going to split in the maximum it can ever split through. It has split by year, by quarter, by month, by date. Now, if I want only months, if I want, I can bring the years in filters. It is only date. We picked a date and put it there because that date is in the right date format. It splits in that way. Now, the quarters, I don't need them. Actually, you can even bring the quarters in the columns. Then I don't need this date because this is the original date. Now you see that I'll remain with months, and you see quarter one is always Jan to Feb. Quarter two is like, quarter three is that, quarter four is that. So you may not need the quarters, you may also bash it out. Then it gives you amounts. And when you come to our data, we only have a release date. That is the trick you can play with your dates. Just a matter of drag your date, put it in rows. It will automatically split. The moment it splits, and the moment it splits, it even brings those splits in your original data, even though they are not on the table. So when you come on your table this side, those quarters and months and years, they are not here. But your pivot table has already, a pivot table creates a cache. I don't know whether you guys know cache. Some people call it cache. Cache for devices, they always keep a memory. It is your phone will keep a memory of a website you visited yesterday. When you visit that website again, it doesn't have to load from inception. It loads from exactly the memory you have. Even some of the apps, you open them, they ask you that, do you want to start from where you stopped? Because there is a memory saved. So even pivot tables save memories. So this is part of the memories it saves. So you see that our Maya date, because of dropping it here in rows, it has split into years, quarters, and months. And that's something I will need, which means I don't need to go back to my table and calculate a column for month, a column for year, a column for quarter, because every calculation, every column you add, it increases on the storage of your workbook. We have seen people have workbooks that they open the workbook, go get tea, come back when the workbook is still opening. No, that's not the mode of working in 2025. There are some things you can do. You remain having exactly what the other person is doing. Now, do you know that we were meant to add here like 3 columns? Yeah, we add there a column for. So you may want, you'll have to create a column of year. You add a column of month. You add a column of quarter. Now, do you know that in data storage what it means? Every number I write, if I write number 1, number 2, these are 2 bytes. These are 2 bytes, 1 byte, 2 byte. And when I write an S, this is calculated different in data storage. You'll find this S is around 12 bytes. Or even you'll find it is taking around, when you look at I don't know, I should bring this to you, but you'll find like an S is calculated at 3 bytes. You'll find like an A is calculated at, let's say, 12 bytes. According to Greek, there is a way how they calculate them to get the megabytes, the kilobytes of your workbook. Now, do you know that every year I calculate here, let's say, 2022. These are already 4 bytes. The moment I run this up to the bottom, those are more than 330,000 rows times 4. You can imagine how many bytes I've created. Now start converting by dividing by 1,000 to convert it in kilobytes, converting it in megabytes. So adding these 3 columns, you'll find that you'll have added like a megabyte on your workbook. And a megabyte on your workbook has seconds it delays your workbook from opening. Just get that from me. So working with pivot tables, pivot tables are smart. That virtually a pivot table has created for us years, it has created for us months, it has created for us quarters. We can use them at any point we need, even though they are not split in the other raw data. I think that's fine, and I have explained it better. So when we come, I was talking about analyze. When we come to analyze, there is something we didn't talk about last time, of grouping. So actually what we had done before was grouping, only that ungroup. So if I say ungroup this, the dates will go back to their original dates. Then when I say please, in these options of grouping will come when you clicked in numbers, and in numbers which are always dates. And when you click on one date, that's when you'll get the group field. Now let's first look at group selection. When I click on this group selection, it will ask me, do you want to group this in years, in quarters, in months, in days, in hours, minutes, or seconds? Now, every time I select, I'm putting that stuff there. So I don't want seconds, I don't want minutes, I don't want hours, I don't want days. I may say I want quarters, like this. The moment I click OK, it is going to group these in quarters. That's the magic you can do with pivot tables. If you ungroup, they go back in dates, and there are very many. You see, you can scroll because your data is having 30. How many are these? Let's count them. It is having 30,055 dates. They were over like around 5 years. Actually, it was from 1920 to 2015. This database for movies. But you can easily group it using the grouping functionalities in Pivot Table Analyze. So if you want, you can say ungroup. Then now there is also this group fields. It is the one that, like the previous one we got, but most cases, if you have numbers, you always use group field because, sorry, the thing is delaying. Now, there is something I want to show you. If we have numbers, let's say, let's create our own numbers. Random between. There is a formula called random between, which you can create your own data. So I want to create a random between from 1 to 100. So it starts with that. I'm going to scroll this up to, now I want to go up to row, let me call these max. Let me call them max. Okay. I want to create these max for 1,000 people. Now I want to go to C 1,001. How do you go there? You're not going to scroll until you reach C 1,001. No. So come here in the cell name. Right there, C 1,001, like that. Enter. It will take you up to 1,001. Remember, I want to copy the other formula of mine. I'll create a Control Shift upwards. It will bring me up to the first or the last number I had, which has a formula, right? So after that, if I want to copy this formula in this selection I've done, I do a Control D. It will copy the formula up to C 1,001. Now, why am I creating? I'm assuming you have data. We are creating our own data here, and I meant to create random data. Now let's create a pivot from this data. If we create a pivot from this data, I will click in that data, go to insert, say insert pivot, and I want to put the pivot here. So I will say insert the pivot in the existing worksheet. Click on the existing worksheet because I want to put it exactly in this sheet, and click OK. Now it will create my canvas. And here I only have one thing, max. Now, the moment I bring these marks in rows, it will create from number 1. Remember, I did from number 1 to 100. Obviously, there is 1 somewhere, there is 2 somewhere, there is 100 somewhere. Now, if I want to count if I want to count, I click back here, I get my field settings. If I want to count, I will drag the marks again, put them under values. Now it is giving me some, but I want to count. How many times is 1 appearing? How many times is 37 appearing? I'll come here and say, value field settings, please do a count, not a sum. Now here it counts for me that a 1 you have it 14 times, a 2 you have it 9 times, a 3 you have it 13 times. Someone has a question. Good afternoon, team. My sincere apologies. Okay. Yeah, Renata, you're welcome. Yeah, today we are diving into pivot tables. Sorry, I've missed a lot, but it's good you're here. The call is recorded. You'll review some of the bits maybe later when the video is generated. So now we have created our rows that these are the marks. Let's say you're working on reports and you want to create frequencies like how many people lie between 1 and 10, how many people lie between 10 and 15. You're not going to count manually in this era that you already know how pivot tables work. Now, let's do that magic. What we have done, we have put all the marks here. We have counted which this we call it frequency, right? That's called frequency. And here, we have counted. If I want the exact headers, I told you, since we haven't come to design, but I told you, you always come to design, report layout, show tabular form. It will show you the header exactly that it is here. These are marks. Now, why I'm creating this, we are looking at this, we are looking at this group field. I want to show you how we group. Now, you want to group, you have been given a task to group from 1 to 10. Then, sorry, I think this column was already having a date. Oh, group from 1, let me put 2 dashes such that it shouldn't pick a date. You group from 1 to 10. Then you group from 11 to 20. You group from that like that. You're not going to do this grouping manually. And by the time you do this grouping, remember the counting is also going to be manually. And if you were told to add more data to the bottom, what are you going to do? It is going to be a mess. Let's do it here with ease. Now, when you click here in Max, you go to Analyze. You will see the group fields. But these group fields will be grayed out if you select more than one. Note that you shouldn't struggle, but Sabit showed us that it is enabled, but me I've selected it is not enabled. So sometimes when you click in this marks, you make sure that you're selecting on only one cell, any cell. Now you come and click on group fields. Group fields, is it opening? Yeah, it's here. Now this group fields comes with options for us to select. It is asking us. It has done an auto group for it. It is starting from 1. It wants to start from 1 and end to 100, of which exactly we are having our numbers from 1 to 100. And it is showing us that the better way is grouping by tens. From 1, you have a difference of 10, 10, 10, 10. Let's first go with its suggestion. The moment I click that, here we go. It is going to show us from 1 to 10 you have 90, from 11 to 20 you have 95, from this to this you have. Now remember with random you can it keeps recalculating. So if I click there, the numbers will keep changing. So if I can click calculate now, the numbers will keep changing. Let me come on the pivot table and refresh it. The numbers keep changing. So every time you refresh, the numbers change, because remember we created our data using the formula random. It keeps randomizing it. Now, this is the way how to group. It means now with ease here, I can create my chart with ease. You can come to insert and insert a pivot chart and select that. Boom, here we go. Go ahead and just come on design. Sorry, on pivot analyze. Click on this to remove the buttons. So you see you can even remove the numbers here. Like we have done a lot of things of these. You can go ahead and format, data labels, you come here and increase the alignment. No, this. So you reduce the gap between, and boom, here we go. You can even remove the horizontal. You can put this is frequency. You name this as frequency by range, by range of 10. So we have done this with ease. It means that if I come here and refresh, my data will be refreshing. I can easily tell that we have 1 to 10 people, 117 people, or max that are 1 to 10. 11 to 10, we have 100. 21 to 30, we have this. You can easily tell even the performance from the mere look of that, because we have done this without using any formula, but using the tricks we have in pivot tables. And that trick is grouping. So if I come here, you can now change the grouping. Let's do the grouping with a bin. We call this a bin range. So we can use the bin range of 5, which means when we use 5, the number increases, and even you've seen the charts have increased, the bars have increased. Wait a minute. Yeah. So I can remove the total thing. You see now the bars have increased 1 to 5, 6 to this. You can even increase this to 20 or to 15. It is up to you. So if I increase this to 20, there you go. So you have 5, 1 to 20, like that. And if you do to 15, it will also, even though 15 is not divisible, when you divide 100 by 15, you get a balance, but it will split. You see, it's starting from 1 up to 105. So between 105, but you know your data is ending at 100. So that's it.
Just a quick one, how you came up with the random data.
Random data, you can always create your own random data. So if I want, I can create my own names. After creating your own names, then you can go ahead and create your own random data. Okay, this is how I came about it. So we said max. Now random data, there is a formula called random between this. So if you want to create your own random data, you may be having another column with names and you want to put maybe revenue. And you say random between the bottom one, we are taking 1,000, and the top one, let's take 100,000, like that. So close and enter, it will start creating the random data. So if I run this up to the bottom, it will do that. But remember, I asked you that if I want to go to B50, do I have to scroll and look for B50 here and click here? Let's say if this is B50. No, the thing is no. Come here, type B50 because I want to go to cell B50. Enter, it will take you there. Do a Control-Shift-Up arrow. It will take you up to the last number you had in your table. But now, since this number has a formula, I will use a Control-D. Control-D means duplicate the formula that is in the 779,000 up to where I have selected last. So I will do Control-D. It will duplicate just the formula, and that formula is dynamic. So there I will have created my own data from B3 to B50. And if you want to add more data, well and good, you can add. Let's say now we want to add up to B1000. I will type here B1000 like this. Enter, I'll go to B1000. Control-Shift-Up arrow, we find the last we had stopped at. Control-D, it copies our data to B1000. This with ease. So you can always create your own data. Now this data, I can go ahead and now start using it. You can even get your own random, let's say, let me show you a trick on, anyway, we are learning. Let me show you a trick on how you can, if you have 5 things and you want to show how you sell them on daily, you can come here and say, I'm selling maybe foods. Now you can come here and create your random. So if I create my random here, create a random that is between 1 and 4. So when I double click, it goes up to the last, which means now you're no longer looking at this. This, let's say this is revenue. Now, since I've created this from one, and this matches this, now you can come and use your X lookup. Maybe this data is somewhere. So you can come and put here your X lookup. It means that X lookup or V lookup. So you can use a VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP. So if I use a VLOOKUP to pick this and bring this, but still leaving it random, which means I can put it here. Now, since this gives a number here, now we want to VLOOKUP that number. So you can say VLOOKUP, this random, then now you put a comma if they bring you a number. So if I select this here, it will be showing me a number of 1. That's the one they have given me at the moment. Now, if they bring this number, then what is the table array? The table array, I will select these 2 columns. And what do I want to be given? It is number 2. Then I want this to be exact, I will put a 0. We shall do a VLOOKUP in another thing. So you see here they are giving me drinks. So if I run this up to the end, so I'm having here maybe products. Product. Now you see how I've created a random formula that is running random with this, that every time I recalculate this, it changes. Now this is foods. Recalculate, actually this thing of recalculate, I just put it here. I showed you how we create a quick access toolbar. You can come here and check where calculate is. So calculate now, you right click on it and put it on your QAT. But you can look for it, it is in data. And somewhere there it is, somewhere calculate data or review. Somewhere. It is here. It is under formulas. It is here, calculate now. So calculate now is like a refresh. You're telling every table of yours if you have put a formula to recalculate again. So it is like a refresh. So now you see, because I've put a formula and it is picking from these 4, it keeps changing them dynamically. And here I already have data to analyze and try and do all the analysis I need. So you can always create your own data to analyze, to learn, and you name them, because most of the data is always copyrighted. I think now you get it how I created my own data. So if I come now, you don't have to delete this because it is connected to this. Let's create our pivot. We see whether we can create a range here. We shall come and insert a pivot. This time I'm putting it on an existing worksheet. I will put it here. Then insert. Here we go. I can delete this to make sure I have my summary extend. So now in my pivot, I can pick the revenue to be in rows, because remember I want to group this, and I can pick the products to be in columns. Now you see, and I can pick revenue again to be in values. You see now here they are picking for me, and here I will say I want a count. I want to count how many lie in that. So it means we have a 108 that lies under machinery. We have in drinks this that is there twice. So if now I want to, remember we are looking at grouping. If I want to group my revenue, I can go to pivot table, analyze, and we go to grouping. Here it is. It first tells us that, you know what, we are going to group by 10,000. We shall start from this and end to this. It is auto. So remember our data, we said we start from 1,000. So you better say start from 1,000. And this, it is up to 10,000. Remember the data we have, we know our data that starts from that to that. Okay, here we can change this to 1,000 like this. such that it gives us 1,000. So between 1,000 and 1,999 foods, we have three revenues in that category. We have this in that category. You can easily analyze here which one is having more revenues that are lying in maybe the maximum. So you can name them, but that's it. So I don't know whether we still have any question on this, but I think I have exhausted it. Now, let's go back to our data, this data we had before, which we want to look at. Last time we looked at the slicers, that we can create a slice of country and a slice of languages, and here they are. We looked at this and I showed you how you can change columns and rows, name them. But this time I want us to look at something they call timeline. So pivot table analyze, we have the insert a timeline. So when you insert a timeline, it will always go to your data and look for a date, only a date. So when we insert a timeline, timeline works with a date, and this is the way our timeline looks like. So you can include a timeline on your dashboard, and people just click on July, people click on August, and it gives them that data. Or you can even drag like this, it gives you data between August to October. Now, because this data is looking at only months, but if I say, let the data look at days, it's going to look at 1 to 30, let me first X. So it is going to look at 1 to 31 for each day, which means if that is 1st of August, then if I drag, this is 1st of August to 10th of August. So most of the times you have not seen this because people don't see the purpose on why they should use it, rather than putting months, and because it is something that is tiresome that you can't put. But at least you know that on top of slicers, we also have something they call a timeline. Okay. So I think we have exhausted on pivot analyze. We know the refresh. Then when you want to change the data source, let's say I have copied the data like this up to, I don't want to, let me not do it as an amateur. Let's do it like the way I've been showing you. We want to pick 1,000 rows only. I'll go up to 1,000, 1,000 like this, enter. So the moment I go to 1,000, I will press a Control Shift up. When the Control Shift up is still selected, I press the right arrow, it takes me up to the right. Now I copy this data because I need part of this data. Let me bring it here and do a paste here. This is a different data. We shall call it new data. Now, I want to change my pivot here. Let me say my pivot, let me remove all the slicers that are there. We bring this data back to, let's group it to months. Since we know groupings, now it should be easy for us to show off with that. So it is already grouped in months. I can just click on months. The months will appear here. Why are the months appearing with a plus? Because when you come at the bottom here on the field settings, there is a date at the bottom. Remove it, put it aside, such that you only look at months. When it is still there, it means that you can drill down in 2 days. Let me show you that you can, if this date is still at the bottom here, it means when you click on this expand, you can look at the different dates in January. And remember, they are all years. So there you may not need it. That's why I put it aside. Now, this data is picking data from, if I click here, it shows me it is picking data from the IM database, movies, this sheet. But I want it to pick from the new data. So you'll just click on this and you redirect it, or you can even delete what is already existing there. You go and select the new data. So long as it has the same columns and row and the same column headers, it may not change much. So select the first cell, Control Shift right, bottom. There it will have selected everything. Enter. When I enter, our data now, this is what we had. Now you see that this one, if I format this to numbers, remember when you right click on one and format it to numbers by putting commas, it adjusts all. Just know that. So remember the other one was giving us 180 something millions. Now this one has reduced because the data we only have 1,000 rows. So there we have changed the location where that pivot table was picking from. Now the best thing is you can always add data at the bottom. Now adding data at the bottom, someone
last modified today at 4:30, case 17 question. We deploy.
Okay, Simon, I'll meet you maybe. So if you want to add the data, there are two things you can always do. You can always change this data set of yours into a table. Just come here to insert and you insert a table here, such that every time your team adds data at the bottom, it automatically picks in your pivots. And another option is coming to your pivot. Let's go to change data source and make sure that you remove the absolute references. So let our data only look at columns, column L to column R, not looking at R 1,000, such that when you add anything in 1,001 row, it will not pick that data. So when you leave your data to look at columns A to R, it means that anything you add here, it is refreshing because we didn't put an option of not to refresh when it changes. Okay, so number. So you can always right click on this and say pivot table options. Here there is this option, preserve cell formatting on update, auto fitting column width on update. You can always uncheck them, then such that when you change anything, the size of the column or the data you have put will not change. Now, we have changed this, which means now this time, if I come and add anything, let me first change this to counts, such that we can easily, let's change this to counts like this, such that we know it is counting 999. So let's add more data. I'm going to copy random data here, Control Shift down arrow, copy. Then I add it at the bottom here, like this. So the moment I add it at the bottom, here it hasn't changed because we need to refresh it. So I'll come here and refresh. So you see it will pick 1,053. Why is it picking? It's because that this data is, my pivot table is only looking at the columns. Anything you add below these columns, it will always pick it. But before it was looking at A1,000 to R1,000, A1 to R1,000. It means after adding these columns, it was not going to pick because it was absolutely looking at what it has. Then also when you convert this into a pivot table, into a table and say okay. Now this is in a table format. It means that here we have 1,053. Let me take anything. Yeah, this one adds to the table. Anyway, I think because I'm already looking at the absolute rows. So if I added anything here like copy, paste that at the bottom, even if I had not looked at the absolute rows, so long as it is a table and your team are updating that table, the moment you come to your pivot tables, your charts, your dashboard will always automatically refresh. Like this one has now refreshed to the one arrow I've added. So I think I've done justice to the pivot analyze tab. At least now you know what everything means. Here we have clear. You can clear all. Clear all means you clear everything. Boom, it goes. You start afresh. So I undo this. Then select. There is selecting what here there is a select values, select labels, select this. So here we do. So in case you clicking somewhere else, you can always select the entire pivot. It selects the entire pivot. In case you want to copy it and you have failed to select it, you can always come to analyze. There is a select here. It will select it. If you want to select now values, you see it selects only values. If you want to select labels, it selects only labels. If you want to select labels and values, it selects that too. So you can always do that. If you want to move your table, your pivot table, sometimes some sheets, Excel sheets, when you move the pivot table, it shows you an error. You can always use this. The moment you click on move and you want to move it to the existing worksheet or a new worksheet, you can move it. So here, if I click here and I say OK, my pivot table will automatically move. Someone may say, why did they add that feature? As if I can drag this and move it. My dear, sometimes, depending on the settings of your worksheet, you may try to move it and it fails. Or depending even on the settings the creator put, they may have protected these cells or these columns that you can't move it, but you can always use this option to move this. Then this is field items. We shall look at this when we are doing some calculations to do calculated fields. Don't mind on this, on the all up, this is to do with if you're picking data from databases like SQL. Then here relationships, I think that's where it comes with gems, where we shall look at Power Pivot and modeling if you're picking data from the different sources. I looked at changing layouts. I've always told you, you can work with compact, outline, or tabular. And I've told you that tabular is always the best to use because it will always do justice for anything you feel like it should have done itself automatically in the background. Conditional formattings, we looked at these in one of the projects. Actually, that was the purpose that we have done projects. We know now we have touched most of the things. Now you guys can insert bars, you can insert columns, you can insert icons, you can name them. Then what we shall look at, we have done grouping. We did sorting, we can do filters because I remember we did top 15. You can do that. If I can come back to my sheet, this is how the filters work. So if I come to filter labels, this is the normal filter. Like you want to filter anything that equals, contains, greater than, name them. So if I say anything greater than 100, I will say, but remember this is labels, but I will come to values. If I want anything greater than 100 and say OK, it will give me only the genres that have counts over 100. So that's how we filter in pivot tables. Because when you click on this filter, you'll never see the values here. You'll always see only the labels. And you'll wonder how now should I filter, but you come here on labels, values, look out for what you want. If you want top 10, I told you it is always top, but you can always change it to bottom. Bottom 4. Here I want to use the sum. Okay, we can use the items, but we are using this count that is here. And okay, it will give me the bottom 5. If you want to go for the top, you can change just this word to top. it will give you the top. So very easy. That is dealing with sorting and filtering. You can play with that. Grouping, we have done justice to this.